Namaste. Peace and blessings of Elohim be with you. Hetzche. Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings in Rastafari. This is a 1 hour walkthrough of Torah. This is session numero 5. This is the concluding session that we address. We read through, we review the book of Devarim, and that translates in the English parlance of Deuteronomy. This is the concluding book of the Torah. So we've gone through the primordial narrative of creation, the generations after generations after generations. We've gone through the enslavement and the exodus from Egypt. We've gone through the conference of the rules, the laws, the offerings. We've gone through the wilderness, the travels, the rebellions, the conflicts, and now we are arriving on the precipice of the promised land. And that is where this book begins, Devarim, the chapter 1 of Parsha Devarim. States, blessing. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahu Akbar. Dao ke, dao fe chong dao. Ming ke, ming fe chong ming. Ja Rastafari. Deus nos te qui es in cele sanctificito nomen tuum. Vaheguru sanam. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kasanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'sok b'divrei Torah. Amen. Kyrie eleison, sefamastu savajigatehim, sabe sata bhavantu sukhitata. Vagabiyam. Aquaba upendo na amani, fakir nesanami, chintadam peramen lebov me umajika. Ubuntu shabala vakitka. Shishe. Como sanida, domo arigato, pilama yelo wokan toko dokashin good medigan. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Ata jamya yata afanami. Bado, aho, om shanti, shanti, shanti. Amen. Devarim, chapter 1, verse 1. These are the words that Moshe addressed to all Israel on the other side of the Jordan, through the wilderness in the Arabah near Suf, between Paran and Tofel, Lavan, Hezerot, and Di Zahav. It is 11 days from Horeb to Kadesh Barnea by the Mount Seir route. It was in the 40th year, on the first day of the 11th month, that Moshe addressed the Israelites in accordance with the instructions that Elohim had given him for them. After he had defeated Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon, and King Og of Bashan, who dwelt at Ashtaroth and Edrei. On the other side of the Jordan, in the land of Moab, Moshe undertook to expound this teaching, this Torah. He said, Elohim, our God, spoke to us at Horeb, saying, you have stayed long enough at this mountain. Start out and make your way to the hill country of the Amorites and to all their neighbors in the Arabah, the hill country, the Shephelah, the Negev, the seacoast, the land of the Canaanites, and the Lebanon, as distant as the great river, the river Euphrates. See, I place a land at your disposal. Go take possession of the land that Elohim swore to your fathers, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, to assign to them and to their heirs after them. Thereupon I said to you, I cannot bear the burden of you by myself. Elohim, your God, has multiplied you until you are today as numerous as the stars in the sky. May Elohim, God of your fathers, increase your number 1,000-fold and bless you as Elohim promised you. How can I bear unaided the trouble of you and the burden and the bickering? Pick from each of your tribes men who are wise, discerning, and experienced, and I will appoint them as your heads. You answered me and said, what you propose to do is beneficial. So I took your tribal leaders, wise and experienced men, and appointed them heads over you, chiefs of thousands, chiefs of hundreds, chiefs of 50s, and chiefs of tens, and officials for your tribes. I charge your magistrates at that time as follows. Hear out your fellow men and decide justly between any man and a fellow Israelite or a stranger. You should not be partial in judgment. Hear out low and high alike. Fear no man, for judgment is Elohim's. And any matter that is too difficult for you, you shall bring to me, and I will hear it. Thus I instructed you at that time about the various things that you should do. So then there is the recounting, the retelling of the narrative of Torah all the way up to this point, from the Exodus until where Moshe stands with the children of Israel at the moment of this text. The conflicts that arrive, scouting the land, the rebellion, the curse of wandering for 40 additional years, continuing on in the wilderness, encountering the relatives, Edom, the descendants of Esau, encountering mighty people, and the eventual dying out of the entire generation during the course of the 40 years. The conflicts with the King Sichon and King Og of Bashan, and the securing of all the spoils from those fights, conferring of land to Reuben and Gad, and then the conferring of authority onto Yehoshua. That concludes the beginning parsha of Devarim. Going on to Va et Anan, begins with chapter 3, verse 23. I pleaded with Elohim at that time, saying, O Elohim God, you who let your servant see the first works of your greatness and your mighty hand, you whose powerful deeds no deity in heaven or on earth can equal, let me, I pray, cross over and see the benevolent land on the other side of the Jordan, that beneficial hill country and the Lebanon. But Elohim was wrathful with me on your account and would not listen to me. Elohim said to me, enough, never speak to me of this matter again. Go up to the summit of Pisgah and gaze about to the west, the north, the south, and the east. Look at it well, for you shall not go across yonder Jordan. Give Yehoshua his instructions and imbue him with strength and courage, for he shall go across at the head of this people, and he shall allot to them the land that you may only see. Moshe continues on by stating, and now, O Israel, give heed to the laws and rules that I am instructing you to observe, so that you may live to enter and occupy the land that Elohim, the God of your fathers, is giving you. You shall not add anything to what I command you, or take anything away from it, but keep the commandments of Elohim your God that I enjoined upon you. You saw with your own eyes what Elohim did in the matter of Baal Peor, that Elohim your God wiped out from amongst you every person who followed Baal Peor, whilst you who held fast to Elohim your God are all alive today. Then there's further strengthening and urging to follow in the laws of justice, righteousness, in order to be steadfast amidst the challenges and threats and temptations. The conference of the 10 Commandments is referenced. then there's a reference to the blessing and the curse. Blessings are provided when there's the practice of righteousness, but then also the anticipation of rebellion, and the consequences of that rebellion. But even amidst the rebellion, there always being the continual existence of redemption, and so to be mindful of that. Right here, chapter 4, verse 29. But if you search there for Elohim your God, you will find Elohim, if only you seek Elohim with all your heart and soul when you are in distress, because all the things have befallen you, and in the end return to Elohim your God and obey Elohim. For Elohim your God is a compassionate God. Elohim will not fail you, nor will Elohim let you perish. Elohim will not forget the covenant which Elohim made on oath with your fathers. You have but to inquire about bygone ages that came before you, ever since Elohim created man on earth, from one end of heaven to the other. Has anything as grand as this ever happened, or has its like ever been known? Has any people heard the voice of a deity speaking out of a fire as you have and survived? Or has any deity ventured to go and take for oneself one nation from the midst of another by prodigious acts, by signs and portents, by war, by a mighty and outstretched arm and awesome power, as Elohim your God did for you in Egypt before your very eyes? It has been clearly demonstrated to you that Elohim alone is God. There is none other besides Elohim. From the heavens, Elohim let you hear Elohim's voice to discipline you. On earth, Elohim let you see Elohim's great fire, and from amidst that fire you heard Elohim's words. And because Elohim loved your fathers, Elohim chose their heirs after them. Elohim by Elohim in Elohim's great might led you out of Egypt to drive from your path nations greater and further populous than you, to take you into their land and assign it to you as a heritage, as is still the case. Know therefore this day, and keep in mind that Elohim alone is God in heaven above and on earth below. There is none other. Observe Elohim's laws and commandments, which I enjoin upon you this day, that it may go well with you and your children after you, and that you may long remain in the land that Elohim your God is assigning to you for all time. Then there further details are described concerning arrangements within the land of Israel. There is the second recitation of the Ten Commandments. I'll recite that. It begins with chapter 5, verse 2. Elohim our God made a covenant with us at Horeb. It was not with our fathers that Elohim made this covenant, but with us, the living, every one of us who is here today. Face to face, Elohim spoke to you on the mountain out of the fire. I stood between Elohim and you at that time to convey Elohim's words to you, for you were afraid of the fire and did not go up the mountain, saying, and just pause right here. One thing to be mindful of is that when this actual event occurs, the adults at that time, all those who are over the age of 20, are at this point now, here in this text, are gone from life, except for Yehoshua and Caleb and Moshe Rabbeinu himself. So when Moshe Rabbeinu is talking about you heard these words, there's the recognition that there are still those who are younger than 20 years old at the time that this original occurrence of the Ten Commandments takes place, when it's conferred. So the audience that Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking to were not the adults, but at the same time were still old enough to remember. Continuing on, verse 6. I, Elohim, am your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the house of bondage. You shall have none other deities besides me. You shall not make for yourself a sculptured image, any likeness of what is in the heavens above, or on the earth below, or in the waters below the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, Elohim, your God, am an impassioned God, visiting the guilt of the parents upon the children, upon the third and the fourth generation of those who reject me, but showing kindness to the 1,000th generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not swear falsely by the name of Elohim your God, for Elohim will not clear one who swears falsely by Elohim's name. Observe Shabbat and keep it holy, as Elohim your God has commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is Shabbat of Elohim your God. You shall not do any work, you, your son or your daughter, your male or female slave, your ox or your ass, or any of your cattle, or the stranger in your settlements, so that your male and female slave may rest as you do. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and Elohim your God freed you from there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore Elohim your God has commanded you to observe Shabbat. Honor your far and your more, as Elohim your God has commanded you, that you may long endure, and that you may fare well in the land that Elohim your God is assigning to you. You should not murder, you should not commit adultery, you should not steal, you should not bear false witness against your neighbor. You should not covet your neighbor's wife, you should not crave your neighbor's house, or his field, or his male or female slave, or his ox, or his ass, or anything that is your neighbor's. Elohim spoke those words, those and no further, to your whole congregation at the mountain with a mighty voice out of the fire and the dense clouds. Elohim inscribed them on 2 tablets of stone, which Elohim gave to me. When you heard the voice out of the darkness, whilst the mountain was ablaze with fire, you came up to me, all your tribal heads and elders, and said, Elohim our God has just shown us Elohim's majestic presence, and we have heard Elohim's voice out of the fire. We have seen this day that man may live, though Elohim has spoken to him. Let us not die then, for this fearsome fire will consume us. If we hear the voice of Elohim our God any longer, we shall die. For what living being ever heard the voice of the living God speak out of the fire as we did and lived? You go closer and hear all that Elohim our God says, and then you tell us everything that Elohim our God tells you, and we will willingly do it. So now, continuing on in chapter 6, this is another prominent passage that is recited on a daily basis, one of the standards of the liturgy within traditional Israel prayer. Begins chapter 6, verse 4, 4. Hear, O Israel, Elohim is our God, Elohim alone. You shall love Elohim your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day, and press them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand, and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Then there's again further imploring of just loyalty and steadfastness. And continuation in this covenant of mitzvot, the commandments, the guidance of being righteous, just, fair, honest, to maintain the integrity within the community, recognizing association with other communities causes influence and temptation towards straying from this discipline. And that is the conclusion of the Parsha. And the next is Aikev. It begins with chapter 7, verse 12, chapter 7, verse 12. And if you do obey these rules and observe them carefully, Elohim, your God, will maintain faithfully for you the covenant that Elohim made on oath with your fathers. Elohim will favor you and bless you and multiply you. Elohim will bless the issue of your womb and produce the produce of your soil, your new grain and wine and oil, the calving of your herd and the lambing of your flock in the land that Elohim swore to your fathers to assign to you. You shall be blessed above all other peoples. There shall be no sterile man or female amongst you or amongst your livestock. Elohim will ward off from you all sickness. Elohim will not bring upon you any of the dreadful diseases of Egypt about which you know, but will afflict them upon all your enemies. It continues on about describing the blessings here. It also describes how the strength, the power of Elohim exists beyond the actions of the individuals, meaning that in terms of defense against threats and even the provisions of nutrients beyond cultivation, that these are provided through the grace of Elohim, and that grace of Elohim that provides these things is shared through observing the rules, the laws, the commands, the mitzvot of righteousness and justice and fairness and peace. And so there's that emphasis. There's reference to the trials and tribulations that are experienced There's description further of the land, chapter 8, verse 7. Ocho siete. For Elohim your God is bringing you to a benevolent land, a land with streams and springs and fountains issuing from plain and hill, a land of wheat and barley, of vines, figs, and pomegranates, a land of olive trees and honey, a land where you may eat food without stint, where you will lack nothing, a land whose rocks are iron and from whose hills you can mine copper. When you have eaten your fill, give thanks to Elohim your God for the benevolent land which Elohim has given you. Take care lest you forget Elohim your God and fail to keep Elohim's commandments, Elohim's rules, and Elohim's laws, which I enjoin upon you today. When you have eaten your fill and have built fine houses to live in, and your herds and flocks have multiplied, and your silver and gold have increased, and everything you own has prospered, beware lest your heart grow haughty, and you forget Elohim your God, who freed you from the land of Egypt, the house of bondage, who led you through the great and terrible wilderness with its seraph serpents and scorpions, a parched land with no water in it, who brought you forth water for you from the flinty rock. Further listings of the provisions are provided here. But the warnings of having that arrogance and thinking one does it on one's own self, ego, again, further reference to the paths, specific incidents that previously occurred that are previously described in the text of the Torah. The golden calf, the breaking of the tablets, the numerous rebellions and complaints amidst the journey. The construction of the Mishkan and the continuing journey. Further provision of further guidance of being modest. Stating here, chapter 10, verse 10, chapter 10, verse 16. Cut away therefore the thickening about your hearts and stiffen your necks no further. For Elohim your God is Elohim supreme and Master supreme, the great, the mighty, and the awesome God, who shows no favor and takes no bribe, but upholds the cause of the fatherless and the widow, and befriends the stranger, providing him with food and clothing. You too must befriend the stranger, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt. You must revere Elohim your God. Only Elohim shall you worship. To Elohim shall you hold fast, and by Elohim's name shall you swear. Elohim is your glory, and Elohim is your God, who wrought for you those marvelous, awesome deeds that you saw with your own eyes. Your ancestors went down to Egypt, 70 persons in all, and now Elohim your God has made you as numerous as the stars of heaven. Continues on with 11, verse 1, which again is also one of the standard daily prayers within the liturgy of the tradition of Israel. Love therefore Elohim your God, and always keep Elohim's charge, Elohim's laws, Elohim's rules, and Elohim's commandments. Take thought this day that it was not your children who neither experienced nor witnessed the lesson of Elohim your God, Elohim's majesty, Elohim's might, Elohim's outstretched arm, the signs of the deeds that Elohim performed in Egypt against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and all his land, what Elohim did to Egypt's army, its horses and chariots, how the Elohim rolled back upon them the waters of the Sea of Reeds when they were pursuing you, thus destroying them once and for all, what Elohim did for you in the wilderness before you arrived in this place, and what Elohim did to Datan and Aviram, sons of Eliab, the sons of Reuben, when the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them, along with their households, their tents, and every living thing in their train from amidst all Israel. But that it was you who saw with your own eyes and all the marvelous deeds that Elohim performed. Keep therefore all the instruction that I enjoin upon you today, so that you may have the strength to enter and take possession of the land that you are about to cross into and possess, and that you may long endure upon the soil that Elohim swore to your fathers to assign to them and to their heirs, a land flowing with milk and honey. For the land that you are about to enter and possess is not like the land of Egypt from which you have come. There the grain you sowed had to be watered by your own labors like a vegetable garden, but the land you are about to cross into and possess, a land of hills and valleys, soaks up its water from the rains of heaven. It is a land which Elohim your God looks after, on which Elohim your God always keeps Elohim's eye from years beginning to year's end. If then you obey the commandments that I enjoin upon you this day, loving Elohim your God and serving Elohim with all your heart and soul, I'll grant the rain for your land in its season, the early rain and the late. You shall gather in your new grain and wine and oil. I will thus provide grass in the fields for your cattle, and thus you shall eat your fill. Take care not to be lured away to serve other deities and bow to them, for Elohim's anger will flare up against you, and Elohim will shut up the sky so that there will be no rain, and the ground will not yield its produce, and you will soon perish from the benevolent land that Elohim is assigning to you. Therefore, impress these my words upon your very heart, bind them as a sign on your hand, and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead, and teach them to your children, reciting them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up, and inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates, to the end that you and your children may endure in the land that Elohim swore to your fathers to assign to them, as long as there is a heaven over the earth. And there's again further articulation of the blessing in concluding the Parsha. The next Parsha is Re'eh. It begins with chapter 11, verse 26, chapter 11, verse 26. See, this day I set before you blessing and curse. And this is the pronounced binary of the blessing and curse. See, this day I set before you blessing and curse. Blessing if you obey the commandments of Elohim your God that I enjoin upon you this day, and curse if you do not obey the commandments of Elohim your God, but turn away from the path that I enjoin upon you this day and follow other deities whom you have not experienced. When Elohim your God brings you into the land that you are about to enter and possess, you shall pronounce the blessing at Mount Gerizim and the curse at Mount Ebal. So it's a matter of remembering both the blessing and the curse. There's a commemoration of both and a mindfulness of both. Further recitation of some of these laws and rules, distinguishing the discipline amongst the children of Israel from the corruptions that surround, maintaining a mindfulness of discrimination, there is a repetition of the laws of kashrut, what appropriate foods are. And then different scenarios of temptation, of adverse influences from outside of the community of Israel, but also within the community of Israel, and the consequences that are prescribed amidst those adverse influences. Further details about proper care of self. Further details concerning kashrut. The provisions provided to the Levite. Reference to forgiveness of debts, forgiveness of enslavements and servitude. Chapter 15, verse 1. Every 7th year you shall practice remission of debts. This shall be the nature of the remission. Every creditor shall remit the due that he claims from his fellow. He shall not dun his fellow or kinsman, for the remission proclaimed is of Elohim. And it does say, you may dun the foreigner, but you must remit whatever is due you from your kinsman. There shall be no needy amongst you, since Elohim your God will bless you in the land that Elohim your God is giving you as a hereditary portion. If only you heed Elohim your God and take care to keep all of this instruction that I enjoin upon you this day. So again, the consequence of living in the righteous way, the just way, is fairness and the lack of necessity. And it goes further detail about when knowing that these protocols are approaching, when the forgiveness of a debt, and additionally, not to be stingy, not to withhold investments or loans or otherwise, for fear of having to forgive it just in the next month or the next year. Again, reference to indentured servitude, and when freeing a servant, not just saying, okay, bye. It's a matter of providing the person with sustenance to be able to be self-sufficient, and to have a proper start back in that experience of emancipation. There's further description of Pesach, and again the calendar of observances, the counting of the Omer, 7 weeks, to the Sukkot, to Shavuot, and then there is the observance of Sukkot, which is the festival of booths. So the three festivals are listed here. Chapter 17, verse 17, 16:16. 3 times a year, on the feast of unleavened bread, on the feast of weeks, and on the feast of booths, all your males shall appear before Elohim your God in the place that Elohim will choose. They shall not appear before Elohim empty-handed, but each with his own gift, according to the blessing that Elohim your God has bestowed upon you. So those are the 3 festivals. And then in addition to that, what is prescribed is Rosh Hashanah, the New Year, and Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, as well as the new moons, Rosh Chodesh, and obviously Shabbat as well. The next Parsha is Shoftim. It begins with chapter 16, verse 18. You shall appoint magistrates and officials for your tribes and all the settlements that Elohim your God is giving you, and they shall govern the people with due justice. You shall not judge unfairly, you shall show no impartiality, you shall not take bribes, for bribes blind the eyes of the discerning and upset the plea of the just. Justice, justice shall you pursue, that you may thrive and occupy the land that Elohim your God is giving you. So the word in Hebrew is tzedek, justice. Further details are described concerning some of these rules. Conducting investigation when there is a violation, particularly concerning matters of worshiping something other than Elohim. And being steadfast in that investigation and meeting out of the consequences of any violation. There's the reference of the setting up of a king, and what the protocols are for any king, maintaining a simplicity of life in order so that there's integrity within the rule of the community. Again, there's reference to the Levite being without any territorial portion, without any hereditary portion, but receiving the tithes from the children of Israel and the offerings and living from that, and having the designated areas to dwell. Further prohibitions concerning spiritual practice are described. Again, the cities of refuge are referenced here. Further details concerning the processes and protocols of the cities of refuge. Protocols concerning witnesses to violations. One of the measures of justice concerning witnesses and accusations is that if there's ever a witness against somebody and that witness actually proves to be false, that the witness is actually lying, whatever the penalty is for that crime, the witness is accusing the defendant of, wrongfully accusing the defendant of, whatever that penalty would have been for the defendant is actually applied to the false witness as a way of preventing that occurrence of false witness and recognizing the solemnity, the seriousness of bearing witness. There's a responsibility, but it's also a matter of being honest about it as well. Then there's the description concerning preparation for war, particularly guidance to soldiers beforehand. And there are allowances for certain men to be exempt from fighting. If a man is just married recently, if he recently has some land and has yet to consecrate it, if he's recently married, has yet to consummate his marriage, and additionally, then such men are exempted from fighting in a prescribed battle. There are descriptions in terms of diplomacy with other communities when on the brink of warfare. The terms of peace are rather strong, basically requiring the other side to acquiesce, otherwise fighting accordingly. That is a very rough, terse summary. I shall just read the passage. When you approach a town to attack it, you shall offer it terms of peace. If it responds peaceably and lets you in, all the people present there shall serve you at forced labor. If it does not surrender to you, but would join battle with you, you shall lay siege to it. And when Elohim your God delivers it into your hand, you shall put all its males to the sword. You may, however, take as your booty the women, the children, the livestock, and everything in the town, all its spoil, and enjoy the utilization of the spoil of your enemy, which Elohim your God gives you. Thus you shall deal with all the towns that lie very distant from you, towns that do not belong to nations hereabout. In the towns of the latter peoples, however, which Elohim your God is giving you as a heritage, you shall not let a soul remain alive. I'm just going to let that speak for itself. I will share, continuing on. There is the description of the occurrence of somebody's body being found inside the land of Israel, but outside any one particular city, and there's no solving of that crime. Then the process that the two cities proceed on in order to make expiation, because recognizing the cities have a responsibility for the well-being of the people there. And so there's a process that the cities have to go through to make amends and provide some healing. So that's the conclusion of the portion. It continues on to the next portion, which is Ki Tetzeh, which is chapter 21, verse 10, 21:10. It says, when you take the field against your enemy, and Elohim your God delivers them into your power, and you take some of them captive, and you see amongst the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire her and would take her to wife, you shall bring her into your house, and she shall trim her hair and pare her nails, and discard her captive's garb. She shall spend a month's time in your house, lamenting her far and more. After that you may come to her and possess her, and she shall be your wife. Then should you no longer want her, you must release her outright. You must not sell her for money, since you had your will of her. You must not enslave her. If a man has two wives, one loved and the other unloved, both the loved and the unloved have borne him sons, but the firstborn is the son of the unloved one. When he wills his property to his sons, he may not treat as firstborn the son of the loved one in disregard of the son of the unloved one who is older. Instead, he must accept the firstborn, the son of the unloved one, and allot to him a double portion of all he possesses. Since he is the fruit of his vigor, the birthright is his due. Further descriptions of consequences for violations, rebellions, and disobedience. Reference again to helping others. If the livestock is suffering, is lost, helping out, returning. Men wearing men's apparel, women wearing women's apparel. Disciplines concerning agriculture. Additional protocols concerning disputes between man and woman. When a man makes a wrongful claim of accusation against his wife, the consequences against him, the punishments against him. Different scenarios concerning a virgin, and whenever there is a violation against a virgin. Additional protocols concerning righteous behavior in a number of different contexts, from going to war, providing finance, making vows. One passage proclaims here, chapter 23, verse 25, when you enter another man's vineyard, you may eat as many grapes as you want until you are full. But you must not put any in your vessel. When you enter another man's field of standing grain, you may pluck ears with your hand, but you must not put a sickle to your neighbor's grain. Additional protocols concerning man and woman, marriage, separation. A number of various other protocols of community behavior. Treating workers with respect. Again, making provisions for the destitute or the impoverished within the community. One of the punishments of flogging and how that is conducted. Proper stewardship of livestock and cattle, particularly working cattle. There's a specific duty of a brother marrying the widow of his own brother. If his brother passes away and there is yet to be any children born to his brother, then the surviving brother marrying the wife and raising children with her on behalf of his brother who passes away. Utilizing honest weights when trading and bartering, and additional protocols of just righteous behavior and interaction. And that concludes this parsha. Continuing on to the next is Kitavo, chapter 26. When you enter the land that Elohim your God is giving you as a heritage, and you possess it and settle in it, you shall take some of every first fruit of the soil which you harvest from the land that Elohim your God is giving you. Put it in a basket and go to the place where Elohim your God will choose to establish Elohim's name. You shall go to the priest in charge at that time and say to him, I acknowledge this day before Elohim your God that I have entered the land that Elohim swore to our fathers to assign us. The priest shall take the basket from your hand and set it down in front of the altar of the Elohim your God. You shall then recite as follows before Elohim your God. My father was a fugitive Aramaean. He went down to Egypt with meager numbers and sojourned there. But there he became a great and very populous nation. The Egyptians dealt harshly with us and oppressed us. They imposed heavy labor upon us. We cried to Elohim, the God of our fathers, and Elohim heard our plea and saw our plight, our misery, and our oppression. Elohim freed us from Egypt by a mighty hand, by an outstretched arm, and awesome prayer, and awesome power, and by signs and portents. Elohim brought us to this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Wherefore I now bring the first fruits of the soil which you, O Elohim, have given me. Then there's further description of that particular ritual. There's the description of setting up a large stones as a commemorating edifice on top of one of the mount on top of Mount Ebal, where the blessings are recited. And here is a designation of the blessings and the curses, and specifically the curses are listed here. I read. So there's been the recitation of curses repeated. I mean, there's been the recitation of blessings repeatedly. Here, there's an initial listing of curses, and then there's again a recitation of the blessings, and then a recitation of the curses. So I'm going to do this with Hashem briefly. Basically just listing it very briefly. So I'm not saying it verbatim, but just listing it. It begins with chapter 27, 15. Cursed be anyone who makes a sculptured or molten image. Cursed be he who insults his far or more. Cursed be he who moves his fellow countryman's landmark. Cursed be he who misdirects a blind person on his way. Cursed be he who subverts the rights of the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. Cursed be he who lies with his far's wife. Cursed be he who lies with any beast. Cursed be he who lies with his sister. Cursed be he who lies with his mother-in-law. Cursed be he who accepts a bribe in the case of the murder of an innocent person. Cursed be he who will not uphold the terms of this teaching and observe them. So then it goes into the blessing. Next chapter, 28. Blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the country. Blessed shall be the issue of your womb, the produce of your soil, and the offspring of your cattle. Blessed shall be. This is not verbatim. This is just skimming. Blessed shall you be in your comings. Blessed shall you be in your basket and your kneading bowl. Blessed shall you be in your comings, and blessed shall you be in your goings. And then there's further description of the blessings accordingly. Then from that, there's the communication of the curses. But if you do not, starting with verse 15, chapter 28. But if you do not obey Elohim your God to observe faithfully all Elohim's commandments and laws which I enjoin upon you this day, all these curses shall come upon you and take effect. Cursed shall you be in the city, and cursed shall you be in the country. Cursed shall be your basket and your kneading bowl. Cursed shall be the issue of your womb and the produce of your soil, the calving of your herd and the lambing of your flock. Cursed shall you be in your comings, and cursed shall you be in your goings. So basically, it's just the reciprocal, but in the curse form. Then there's further details about the curses, and again, it gets increasingly graphic about these consequences. It actually delves into like the base fears that people have in life, particularly in the household life, all the insecurities on a daily basis that people have. These are exactly speaking to that and actually happening in like the worst way thinkable. I've recited on previous sessions here some of that graphic articulation of the curses: eating of one's own flesh, eating of the flesh of one's own children, and that's repeated here as well. It goes even further, actually. basically, I won't recite it again, but what it says here is that even further than just eating the flesh of one's own children, it says that the daintiest of women and like the genteelest of men will be resorted to the experience of the woman giving birth to her newborn baby, and then eating her baby and being greedy to withhold that from her own family, just eating the baby by herself. So I guess it's beneficial if I read that, actually, just so it's not just my word. Okay. So it begins with chapter 28 again, verse 54. He who is most tender and fastidious amongst you shall be too mean to his brethren and the wife of his bosom and the children he has spared, to share with any of them the flesh of the children that he eats, because he has nothing else left as a result of the desperate straits to which your enemies shall reduce you in all your towns. And she who is most tender and dainty amongst you, so tender and dainty that she would never venture to set a foot on the ground, shall begrudge the husband of her bosom and her son and her daughter the afterbirth that issues from between her legs and the babies she bears. She shall eat them secretly because of utter want, and the desperate straits to which your enemy shall reduce you in your towns. So again, that's again in not abiding by the laws of righteousness, all these consequences increasingly occurring, until the point where it gets to there and further. But again, there's the dispersion, and eventually the redemption, the return. And that is actually the conclusion of this portion. The next is Nitzavim. It begins with chapter 29, verse 9. You stand this day, all of you, before Elohim your God, your tribal heads, your elders, and your officials, all the men of Israel, your children, your wives, even the stranger within your camp, from the woodchopper to water drawer, to enter into the covenant of Elohim your God, which Elohim your God is concluding with you this day, with its sanctions, to the end that Elohim may establish you this day as Elohim's people and be your God, as Elohim promised you, and as Elohim swore to your fathers, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. I make this covenant with its sanctions, not with you alone, but both with those who are standing here and with us this day before Elohim our God, and with those who are not with us here this day. It continues on in describing some of the challenges historically experienced, referencing the challenges, the trials and tribulations that the children of Israel experience. Then it states again with chapter 30, when all these things befall you, the blessing and the curse that I have set before you, and you take them to heart amidst the various nations to which Elohim your God has banished you, and you return to Elohim your God, and you and your children heed Elohim's command with all your heart and soul, just as I enjoined upon you this day, then Elohim your God will restore your fortunes and take you back in love. Elohim will bring you together again from all the peoples where Elohim your God has scattered you, even if your outcasts are at the ends of the world. From there Elohim your God will gather you, from there Elohim will fetch you. And Elohim your God will bring you to the land that your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it. And Elohim will make you further prosperous and further numerous than your fathers. Then Elohim your God will open up your hearts and the hearts of your offspring to love Elohim your God with all your heart and soul, in order that you may live. Moshe Rabbeinu continues on, stating that these rules, this covenant, it's not something that's way out there and inaccessible. It's immediate and it's available. Specifically, chapter 30, verse 11. Surely this instruction which I enjoin upon you this day is not too baffling for you, nor is it beyond reach. It is not in the heavens that you should say, who amongst us can go up to the heavens and get it for us and impart it to us, that we may observe it? Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who amongst us can go across to the other side of the sea and get it for us and impart it to us, that we may observe it? No, the thing is very close to you, in your mouth and in your heart, to observe it. See, I set before you this day life and prosperity, death and adversity. For I command you this day to love Elohim your God, to walk in Elohim's ways, and to keep Elohim's commandments, Elohim's laws, and Elohim's rules, that you may thrive and increase, and that Elohim your God may bless you in the land that you are about to enter and possess. But if your heart turns away and you give no heed and are lured into the worship and service of other deities, I declare to you this day that you shall certainly perish. You shall not long endure on the soil that you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess. I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day. I have put before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life, if you and your offspring would live, by loving Elohim your God, heeding Elohim's commands, and holding fast to Elohim. For thereby you shall have life, and shall long endure upon the soil that Elohim swore to your ancestors, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, to give to them. That is the conclusion of the portion. And it begins, the next parsha, Vayelech, begins chapter 31. Moshe went and spoke these things to all Israel. He said to them, I am now 120 years old. I can no longer be active. Further, Elohim has said to me, you shall not go across yonder Jordan. Elohim your God by Elohim will cross over before you, and Elohim by Elohim will wipe out those nations from your path, and you shall dispossess them. Yehoshua is the one who shall cross before you, as Elohim has spoken. So now Moshe Rabbeinu is encouraging the children of Israel to be brave, to be strong, and to be steadfast in this next stage, particularly without the leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu. It states, verse 9, Moshe wrote down this teaching and gave it to the priests, sons of Levi, who carried the ark of Elohim's covenant, and to all the elders of Israel. And Moshe instructed them as follows. Every seventh year, the year set for remission, at the Feast of Booths, when all Israel comes to appear before Elohim your God in the place that Elohim will choose, you shall read this teaching aloud in the presence of all Israel. Gather the people, men, women, children, and the strangers in your communities, that they may hear and so learn to revere Elohim your God and to observe faithfully every word of this teaching. Their children too, who have not had the experience, shall hear and learn to revere Elohim your God as long as they live in the land that you are about to cross the Jordan to possess. Then from that, continuing immediately, Elohim said to Moshe, the time is drawing near for you to die. Call Yehoshua and present yourselves in the tent of meeting, that I may instruct him. Moshe and Yehoshua went and presented themselves in the tent of meeting. Elohim appeared in the tent in a pillar of cloud, the pillar of cloud having come to rest at the entrance of the tent. Elohim said to Moshe, you are soon to lie with your fars. This people will thereupon go astray after the alien deities in their midst. In the land that they are about to enter, they will forsake me and break my covenant that I made with them. Then my anger will flare up against them, and I will abandon them and hide my countenance from them. They shall be ready prey, and many evils and troubles shall befall them. And they shall say on that day, surely it is because our God is not in our midst that these evils have befallen us. Yet I will keep my countenance hidden on that day because of all the evil they have done in turning to other deities. Therefore write down this poem and teach it to the people of Israel. Put it in their mouths in order that this poem may be my witness against the people of Israel when I bring them into the land flowing with milk and honey that I promise on oath to their fathers, and they eat their fill and grow fat and turn to other deities and serve them, spurning me and breaking my covenant, and the many evils and troubles befall them. Then this poem shall confront them as a witness, since it will never be lost from the mouth of their offspring. For I know what plans they are devising even now before I bring them into the land that I promise on oath. That day Moshe wrote down this poem and taught it to the Israelites. And Elohim charged Yehoshua, son of Nun, be strong and resolute, for you shall bring the Israelites into the land that I promised them on oath, and I will be with you. When Moshe had put down in writing the words of this teaching to the very end, Moshe charged the Levites who carried the ark of the covenant of Elohim, saying, take this book of the teaching and place it beside the ark of the covenant of Elohim your God, and let it remain there as a witness against you. Then there's the recitation of the poem, and that concludes this parsha. The next parsha is Ha'azinu, which is the actual poem. It begins with chapter 32. Give ear, O heavens, let me speak, let the earth hear the words I utter. May my discourse come down as the rain, my speech distill as the dew. like showers on young growth, like droplets on the grass. For the name of Elohim I proclaim. Give glory to our God, the rock. Elohim's deeds are perfect, yea, all Elohim's ways are just. A faithful God never false, true and upright is Elohim. Then it goes on to recite what is described just previously. The history of the travels, the teachings, the blessings and the curses, the redemption. And after reciting the poem, it states here, chapter 32, verse 48, that very day Elohim spoke to Moshe, ascend these heights of Devarim to Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab, facing Jericho, and view the land of Canaan, which I am giving the Israelites as their holding. You shall die on the mountain that you are about to ascend, and shall be gathered to your kin, as your brother Aaron died on Mount Hor and was gathered to his kin. For you both broke faith with me amongst the Israelite people at the waters of Meribah Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin by failing to uphold my sanctity amongst the Israelite people. You may view the land from a distance, but you shall not enter it, the land that I am giving to the Israelite people. Then we arrive at the concluding portion of the Torah itself. Vizot ha-berecha, chapter 33, it begins, this is the blessing with which Moshe, the man of God, bade the Israelites farewell before he died. He said, Elohim came from Sinai, Elohim shone upon them from Seir, Elohim appeared from Mount Paran and approached from Ribabot Kodesh, lightning flashing at them from Elohim's right, lover indeed of the people. Their hallowed are all in your hand, they followed in your steps, accepting your pronouncements. When Moshe charged us with the teaching as the heritage of the congregation of Yaakov, then Elohim became sovereign in Yeshurun. When the heads of the people assembled, the tribes of Israel gathered. Then it provides a specific blessing for each of the sons of Israel, which has its own implications, prophetic influences, and further. And after giving a blessing for each of the sons, each of the tribes, then Moshe provides a concluding summation. And this is how the Torah concludes, chapter 34. 34. Moshe went up from the steps of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the summit of Pisgah, opposite Jericho, and Elohim showed him to the whole land, Gilead as distant as Dan, all Naphtali, the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, the whole land of Yehuda as distant as the western sea, the Negev, and the plain, the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, as distant as Zoar, and land. And Elohim said to him, this is the land of which I swore to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. I will assign it to your offspring. I have let you see it with your own eyes, but you shall not cross there. So Moshe, the servant of Elohim, died there in the land of Moab at the command of Elohim. Elohim buried him in the valley in the land of Moab near Bet Peor, and no one knows his burial place to this day. Moshe was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were undimmed and his vigor unabated. And the Israelites bewailed Moshe in the steppes of Moab for 30 days. The period of wailing and grieving for Moshe came to an end. Now Yehoshua, son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom because Moshe had laid his hands upon him, and the Israelites heeded him, doing as Elohim had commanded Moshe. Never again did there arise in Israel a prophet like Moshe, from whom Elohim singled out face to face for the various signs and portents that Elohim had sent him to display in the land of Egypt against Pharaoh and all his courtiers and his whole country, and for all the great might and awesome power that Moshe displayed before all Israel. That is the conclusion, and that is the summation of this session as well. Alhamdulillah, ar-Rahmani ar-Rahim, Allahu Akbar. Dao ke, dao fe cheng, dao min ke, min fe cheng, min ja Rastafari. Deus noster qui es in cielo, sanctificato nomen tuum, vaheguru sanam. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kasanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'sok b'divrei Torah. Amen. Kyrie eleison, sivamas tu save jegatahe, sabe sata b'avantu sukitata. Vagabiyam, aquaba upendo na amane, fakiri nesilami, chinta dam per me, liba v'me, umejega, umbuntu shabana fakitka. Sheshe, kamosunida, domo arigato, pilum hayelo wokan toko doko shingun, gumanigan. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Ata jamya et afanami, mado, aho, om shanti, shanti, shanti. Amen. All thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim. Blessed love and peace. Blessed love and peace. Blessed love and peace. Respect and honor to all our ancestors, all our prophets, all our sages, past and present, known and unknown. Respect and honor to His Majesty Haile Selassie and Her Majesty Waiza Ramanan. Blessed love and peace in Rastafari. One perfect love. Namaste. Assalamu alaikum. Ado.